Home prices are nosediving. This is your Florida housing market update. And today we're going to get right into it. And it's bright out, so I'm going to put on my sunglasses. And we're going to do a little walk and talk. Because right now, folks are afraid. They are uncertain. They're not sure what they want to do or what they need to do. And so I'm here to tell you the truth about what's actually happening right now. So we've got a debt crisis. We've got a liquidity crisis. We have a banking crisis. We've got an economic crisis. We've got an unemployment crisis. We've got a financial market crisis. We've got a political crisis. We've got every crisis that you could possibly want to have. Lack of trust in the banking system. We've got the Fed on a tightening cycle, which is crushing all markets and breaking the economy and breaking the banking system. And we've got the threat of de-dollarization. And while I don't think that's a real threat today, it's absolutely happening as we speak. And yet, in my housing market, there is no more land to develop. And there is a scarcity of resource. Or I should say, I thought there was, because the truth is, I just learned that they are building a luxury apartment community, which includes workforce housing right next to the community in which I live. And I'll be totally transparent. I noticed they were doing something with this land about a year ago, because I walk my dog behind the community and in that big open lot all the time. It's the perfect place for him to run around and play, which I have always thought was fantastic. However, what I didn't think was possible was there was enough room for any more development there. I didn't think it was possible. In fact, I thought it was supposed to be preserve land. And what I've come to learn is that all of this preserve land or reserve land that exists is up for sale eventually. And all of the land that I currently am standing on right now at one point was either agricultural land or swamp, but all of it has been developed and there's very little of it left to develop. And while I thought this particular lot would be suboptimal, well, some builder convinced the municipality that it's not. And although the infrastructure that is here currently doesn't really work, doesn't even work for the communities that are here, the roads barely support the traffic, especially when the schools are letting out. It basically shuts down the entire road system. It will be no bueno when there's an additional 330 units that are available for rent. But that's the way it goes when there is no more land to develop. Builders will eventually find the right price in order to purchase and secure the rights. And that's what they're doing. And so what I think about it being suboptimal means nothing, because the market is always right. And the builders are making a fortune, and they will continue to do so. But that deal is done, and it is what it is. And if I don't like it, well, I can move. Which brings me to the phone call that I received yesterday from someone just like you who watches my YouTube content that has a question about their particular market. Now, it's not a market that I personally serve and support, but I cover all 22 metros in the state of Florida. I absolutely know what's going on from a macro perspective, and I'm connected with boots on the ground operators that absolutely know the market cold, that can serve and support you at the highest level, no matter where you're at. And so she was concerned and she was scared. It was clear. She wanted to know if she should sell her house. She wanted to know if she should move. She wanted to know if the market is crashing. And while I told her that her market is very different than mine, and it is, I also asked her some qualifying questions. And what I learned is that she owns the house at a 3% mortgage interest rate. And she's financially secure and intends to live in it long term. But she also knows what's going on in terms of the bigger picture. She also knows what's going on in terms of the leading indicators. And anybody who's got a brain in their head can look at what's happening right now and know that we are in the biggest bubble of all time, and that bubble must crash, right? And while I could give you a high-level dissertation about inverted yield curves and all types of technical analysis and all types of economic analysis, which will absolutely build the case and absolutely destroy what the government is telling us in terms of economic conditions, unemployment, inflation, and whatever other nonsense bullshit narrative they are trying to sell us in order to get reelected. I'll save us both the time. You don't need a deep dive analysis of anything to know that everything is at risk, because every market is at risk, period. And the truth is, people that are buying homes right now don't care. They simply don't care. They can afford to make the financial decisions that they're making today in order to max out living right now. And while you didn't ask, but I'm going to share it anyway, I believe that the system is being manipulated in a way in order to bring down mortgage interest rates. I suspect that we will see towards the end of the year significant improvement in terms of mortgage interest rates. I think in the short term, it is very likely that you will see mortgage interest rates trading in the fives. And whether that's good, bad, right, or wrong is irrelevant. I suspect it's going to happen. And when it does, I suspect we're going to see the market go off. I know that it will stimulate demand. I know that you're going to see an enormous amount of buying, and that will continue to impact home values. It will continue to kick the can down the road, and it will continue to make affordability a real issue, because home prices are going to skyrocket, especially in Florida housing markets, up until they don't. Because the truth is, right now, despite the fact that there is all types of threats and political posturing from Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Janet Yellen, and Big Papa Powell, and honestly, because he's completely irrelevant to me at this point, I almost completely forgot about Joe Biden. But nonetheless, all of them are playing chicken with the economy, are playing chicken with the crisis, are playing chicken with Russia and China, and they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. They're trying to manipulate the system in order to get what they want. And I want you to get what you want too, which I suspect is the truth. And to be clear, I am going to cover the housing market where home prices are nosediving, because in the market that I'm going to share about, they are, or at least they were as of March. And we're in May, so everything I'm about to share is completely irrelevant, but it's the best, most accurate information that exists, because real estate information is lagging. It is old. It is not relevant if you're trying to make a decision today based on today's market. And if that's information that you need, then please reach out, because we will get it to you right away. But getting back to the phone call that I got from the nice lady, she's terrified about missing the opportunity to cash out at a high. Essentially, it's fear of missing out from a seller perspective. But with a few questions, I quickly realized there was no reason for her to sell. There was no incentive for her to sell. Because although I know that the markets are going to correct, and I believe the housing market is going to crash, it's not going to happen tomorrow. You've got years, because the market is so lagging. And Big Papa Powell's plan to create more unemployment is working. It is working 100% effectively, because the numbers that they're sharing in terms of unemployment are completely manipulated. The numbers are not real. And I hope the politicians are smart enough to not waste a good crisis. The fact that we have a debt ceiling crisis, which can be used for leverage to negotiate better terms, if the people involved, pelotas, are big enough to be able to actually negotiate. At the end of the day, the debt ceiling is 1,000% getting raised. Because if the U.S. defaults on T-bill payments, the entire world is at risk, because everything is tied to the dollar. And while the non-farm payrolls have been blowouts as far as what they report versus the expectation, I believe it's been 12 consecutive blowouts. Every single one of those blowouts has been revised downward. And I'm going to go out there and make a bold prediction as to where I think the actual unemployment number will be in Q1 of 2024. I suspect it will be in the double digits. I suspect the real number will be closer to 15%. 15% unemployment. And if you look at the inversion curve and the volatility that exists in the bond market, they're bracing for that too. And while I certainly do not want to put on a tinfoil hat, I suspect that that crisis will be leveraged to create a trackable digital currency. And while it probably won't be called that, if the government, if the Treasury has all of our financial information on one ledger, we are truly F, because very quickly they will be able to monitor and control and tell you where you can and can't spend. Welcome to the United States of China. And to be abundantly clear, I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be right, but we must wake up to the reality of what's actually happening right now, because the last thing that's going to tell us what happened is home prices. And yet home prices are exactly what I'm going to talk about right now, because home prices are nosediving in the Florida housing market right now in some markets. And shout out to my boy, Kevin. You can find him at Kevin247 on YouTube or other platforms. And his wife, Michelle, you can find her at Squirrel Tribe. And we've done some content in the past. We're friends, but they happen to live in the Destin market. And they had some questions about Destin home values. And to be totally transparent, Destin is about 8 hours away from where I live. It's not exactly right around the corner. It's a completely different market and trades completely differently than anything in my market. And while I certainly cover it in my analysis of the Florida markets, it wasn't a market that I intended to cover immediately up until they asked me to, which takes us to the most recent housing market data that exists, your Florida housing market update for the Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, Destin Metro, which, as you can see on the map in blue, is nowhere near where I am in Southeast Florida. And it's comprised of Okaloosa and Walton counties. It's in a region that they call Florabama because in certain areas you feel like you're living in Alabama, which is very different than my market, which feels like you're living in a borough of New York. And let me clarify that without all the insane extra taxes and without all of the government restrictions. But closed sales are down 20.5% for single family homes as of March 2023. And to be clear, we are in May. April numbers will not be out for another few weeks. And when we get them, they will be old. They will be useless. The information that I'm sharing with you is instructive. But if you're thinking about buying something in any market, you must know what's happening right now. So if you are thinking about buying or selling really anywhere, please reach out, because if you're shopping in my market, then I am obviously your guy. If you're shopping in a different market, I will connect you with someone that I know, like, and trust, an all-star professional that absolutely understands what the hyperlocal market is right now, so they can advocate and negotiate for you the right way. Because ain't nobody overpaying on my watch, and ain't nobody not getting full market value if they are selling. And getting back to the conversation that I had with the nice lady yesterday, who is located in a market closer to the Crestview, Fort Walton, Destin Beach Metro than I am. And while I'm positive I could have scared the bejesus out of her and got her to sell her home right now, that would have been the wrong thing for me to advise, based on everything that she shared with me about her timeline and her financial condition. And yes, it's true, I am a boots on the ground operator of a high performance real estate team that gets paid when someone buys or sells. The last thing I want anybody to do is anything that is not right for them, because the market is always good for me. If the market were to go to zero tomorrow, that would be good for me. And if the market was to go to infinity, that would also be good for me, because the market is always good for someone. And I know how to serve and support everyone at the highest level, irrespective of market conditions. But let's get back into the numbers. Median sales price is down almost 6%. Average sales price down almost 20%. 19.3 to be exact. In March of 2022, the average sales price was a touch under 882,000, and as of March of 2023, it was down to 711, 711, 7 even back go little Joe. Let's go. Time to contract up 450%. Really not a big deal. A return to normal from 6 days to 33. Median time to sale up 58.2%. This is a nothing burger, 55 days to 87. But new pending sales are down almost 27%. New listings are down 21.2%. Pending inventory is down 46%, 45.7 to be exact. But the active listings sitting on the market unsold, your competition, if you're thinking about selling, your choices, if you're thinking about buying, it's skyrocketed from 837 to almost 2,000 homes sitting on the market unsold, which means if you're selling, you got no leverage. Median percent of original list price received down 2.1%. Buy 100%. Hello, 98%. Really not a big deal. And if you're buying, it means you've got tremendous leverage, at least relative to the recent past. But that massive spike in active inventory translated into month supply of inventory of 3 months. And to be clear, 3 months is still a seller's market. You just have a lot more choices and a lot more leverage if you're thinking about buying. There's also a hell of a lot more competition if you're thinking about selling, but it's not a month. And a month is an extreme seller's market. The month supply of inventory upticked by 200%. There are no distressed sellers yet, but when everything that I talked about earlier in this video starts to play out, you can bet your sweet pippy that those numbers are going to uptick radically. And home prices, although they're down in Crestview, Fort Walton, Destin, right now, they're going bye-bye when the shit hits the fan, which is a great opportunity for you to take advantage of if you're capitalized the right way. And you can bet your sweet pippy that BlackRock and Blackstone and Goldman Sachs and the government, for crying out loud, because they basically run and manipulate and own most of the institutions. Just ask JP Diamond at JP Morgan, who is the benefactor and might as well be the ledger. And it's something we must watch out for, because if Chase becomes the quote unquote ledger, I got news for you. It might as well be the government, and we are fucked. And the consolidation in the banking system, in the banking industry, is no bueno. But median sales price in the Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, Destin Metro is no bueno either. Year to date, it's down almost 4% to 400,000. March of 2023, it was down almost 6%, 5.5 to be exact, to a touch over 412. But you can see by looking at the chart that almost every month for the last year has either been double-digit appreciation or damn close to it. But gone are the days of 16%, 11%, 17%, 11%. And welcome to the party, volatility in pricing. And you can expect to see volatility in pricing in every market very soon. We already see it in the bond market. We already see it in the financial markets. Go check your mutual funds. Go check your stock accounts. Go check your IRAs. You'll notice there's been a ton of volatility in the financial markets, but the big crash that is coming hasn't happened yet. But the inversion that we see in some of the charts that are out there clearly indicate that it's coming. And when we've got double-digit unemployment, you can bet your sweet bippy it's coming, which doesn't mean you should not buy a house if you can afford to do so. Because although I know what I'm seeing is right, it doesn't mean the market will react the way I think it will. And I know that the government can continue to manipulate the knob and continue to play games with the system to kick the can down the road for another 5, 10, 15 years. But at some point, it stops, which is why it's critical that you understand your financial position. It's critical that you understand your timeline. And it's critical that you must want to move to max out Florida living, because if none of those things are true, you probably should not buy a home. which brings us to average sales price. And average sales price tells us a story. It tells us a story of volatility. And year to date, average sales price in the Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, Destin Metro is down almost 10%. In March, it was down almost 20%. And in January and December, it was down by double digits, 13 and 12% respectively. But you can't help but notice the volatility, because although we had a loss of 13.3% in terms of average sales price back in January, the next month we saw an uptick of 9%, followed by a downtick of damn near 20. But I don't see 25% appreciation happening for average sales price in this metro anytime soon. But Chris, what does that mean in terms of pre-pandemic numbers? Well, I'm glad you asked. And if you look at the bar graph on the bottom, you can see where we're at right now versus where we were in 2019, where the average sales price was 400,000. 400,000 to buy a single family home versus 711, $711,000. There is massive appreciation that has happened in this market and every other Florida housing market. And even if every doomsday scenario happened short of nuclear war, because I'm not smart enough to price in that event, but if the financial markets were to get cut in half right now, it would have no impact on pricing tomorrow. And if we use the great financial crisis, which I suspect the next one will be worse, let's use that for context. The housing market didn't catch up to the 2006 event until 2012, which is simply me telling you it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And those who can afford to do so and want to live their best life now don't care about market timing. They're not shopping for the best deal. They're shopping for their best life, which may or may not apply to you. It may or may not be right for you. And if it's not right for you, for the love of God, do not take on a financial obligation that you can't afford. Do not put yourself in financial risk if there is uncertainty about your income. Please be smart and govern yourself accordingly, because at some point, there must be better deals. And you can bet your sweet pippy that there are a lot of folks and a lot of institutions that are going to take advantage of that. Which actually brings me to a story that I had yesterday with someone just like you who found me on YouTube and had some questions. And they're a first-time home buyer and they can afford to buy a home. And so I took the time to role play a few different scenarios, doomsday and otherwise, and mapped out a plan as to what both scenarios might look like. You could call it a cost-benefit analysis. And at the end of the day, I suspect that buying a home that he can afford is the right thing to do. And I also think, based on his age, that if he continues to do what he is doing and continues to be disciplined and financially prudent and responsible, he will be in a position to capitalize on the fire sale when it happens. And so can everyone else, which is why I share the information that I do. And I hope that you find value in my content. So please subscribe to the channel. And more importantly, please follow me on Twitter, because in the event this channel was to ever go away, you can always find me there. And very soon I'll be on other platforms too. So if this channel was ever to be taken away, you'll be able to find me and the truth. Which takes us to the supply side of this conversation. And you can't help but notice that the supply side is off to the races. And in March, it was up 132%. And if you look at where we're at now, relative to what the active listing inventory was back in 2019, although we're not exactly there yet, we are damn close. And supply and demand will always dictate price. And obviously, the supply side is on the uptick in a big way. The new listings that are coming on the market are not. In fact, new listings in March of 2023 were down 21%. And new listings year to date are down 17.4%. Because just like the woman who called me yesterday, who's in a 3% mortgage, no one wants to trade into a 7% mortgage. And while I do suspect that mortgage interest rates will come down towards the end of the year. That will be temporary. That will be something you can take advantage of. But I suspect the long-term mortgage interest rate trend looks more like 1970. And I suspect at some point you'll be paying double-digit mortgage interest rates because that's the best deal around. And the mortgage market at that point in time will be right. And the mortgage market at that point won't care what anybody thinks because that's the way the markets are. They don't have feelings and they don't care. Take it or leave it. It is what it is. Which takes us to the distressed sale market in the Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, Destin Metro. And to be clear, the last time there was a housing crash, it only took 10% of overall national sales to be in distress to create a 30% price decline. But that's the macro number. The micro markets that exist within it traded much worse. There were half price homes. There were better than half price homes. There were fire sales. And as of today, right now, almost every homeowner in the state of Florida is sitting on a metric shit ton of equity. They aren't feeling distress in terms of housing. But if they lose their job and they can't make payments on their car or for groceries or for their children to eat, I can assure you that the first thing that goes is the biggest ticket item with the most equity. And the supply side, distressed or not, will explode. But as of March, foreclosures are a non-event. They were down 20% from 5 to 4. Short sales were non-existent, down 100% from 2 to 0. Right now, there is no distressed sale inventory, essentially throughout the state of Florida. And yet, it's coming. Now, I hope you found this content valuable. And if you did, please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, follow me on Twitter, and check out my next video because I suspect you will love it a lot. And until next time, peace.